영어로 듣는 조지오웰의 동물농장, 서머리.
George Orwell's 1945 novella, Animal Farm, A Fairy Story, is one of the most powerful and enduring political satires in modern literature. This discussion will cover three key areas. First, the summary of the work itself. Second, the biography of its author, George Orwell. And third, the crucial historical and political context that inspired its creation. Part 1. Summary of Animal Farm. Animal Farm is an allegorical novel set on Manor Farm in England. The animals, led by the pigs, rebel against their human farmer, Mr. Jones, driven by the philosophy of animalism. The rebellion succeeds, and the animals rename the farm Animal Farm, establishing 7 commandments based on the core principle: 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. The rise and corruption of the pigs. The pigs, being the most intelligent animals, quickly assume leadership. The main figures are 1. Old Major, the wise old boar who inspires the rebellion with his vision of a utopian farm. He symbolizes figures like Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin, providing the revolutionary ideology. 2. Snowball, a clever, idealistic pig who organizes committees and plans the windmill. He represents Leon Trotsky, a brilliant but ultimately exiled revolutionary. 3. Napoleon, a fierce, power-hungry pig who uses brute force, specifically the dogs he secretly trains to eliminate rivals and consolidate power. He is the clear allegory for Joseph Stalin. 4. Squealer, the cunning propagandist pig who twists the 7 commandments and manipulates the other animals with lies and misinformation. He symbolizes the Soviet media apparatus, particularly Pravda. The betrayal of the revolution. The story documents the steady, cynical corruption of the revolution. Elimination of rivals. Napoleon brutally drives out Snowball, ending any form of democratic debate or dissent, and establishes his absolute control over the farm. Revision of history. Squealer continuously revises the 7 commandments to justify the pigs' luxurious lifestyle and their increasingly oppressive rule. The most famous example is the final, ultimate commandment, which replaces all others. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. This vividly illustrates the complete perversion of the revolution's initial ideals. The fate of Boxer. Boxer, the loyal, hard-working horse, embodies the dedicated and exploited working class, the proletariat. His motto, "I will work harder," drives him to exhaustion. When he eventually collapses from overwork, Napoleon heartlessly sells him to the knacker slaughterhouse for profit, a devastating betrayal of the animal's trust and the revolution's promise of care for its workers. The final scene. The novella ends with a chilling scene. The other animals peer through the farmhouse window, watching the pigs feast and play cards with the human farmers. They are utterly unable to distinguish the faces of the pigs from the faces of the men. This powerful imagery symbolizes the complete circularity of power, where the new oppressors have become indistinguishable from the old, demonstrating the novel's central theme: absolute power corrupts absolutely. Part 2. The author, George Orwell. Eric Blair. To truly understand Animal Farm, we must look at the man who wrote it, George Orwell. Early life and dissatisfaction. Real name: Orwell was born Eric Arthur Blair in 1903 in colonial India, where his father was a minor British civil servant. Education and disillusionment. He attended prestigious schools in England, including Eton, but felt deeply uncomfortable with the rigid English class system and the snobbery of the elite. This early experience fostered a lifelong distrust of authority and hierarchy. Burma. Rather than attending university, he joined the Indian Imperial Police in Burma 1922 to 1927. This experience exposed him directly to the brutal reality of colonialism, police brutality, and the abuse of power, cementing his lifelong hatred of imperialism and tyranny. His essay Shooting an Elephant vividly recounts his moral struggles during this period. Becoming Orwell. Upon returning to Europe, he deliberately chose a life of poverty for a time, working various menial jobs and living among the working class in Paris and London. He began writing about poverty and social injustice, taking the pen name George Orwell, George for England, Orwell for a beloved English river, to reflect his deep commitment to English identity and social justice. His early works, like Down and Out in Paris and London, and The Road to Wigan Pier, explore these themes. Political turning point. The Spanish Civil War. The decisive political event in Orwell's life was the Spanish Civil War, 1936 to 1939. Driven by his socialist ideals and his fierce anti-fascist convictions, he traveled to Spain to fight on the side of the Republicans against the fascist General Francisco Franco. He specifically joined the Marxist militia POUM Workers' Party of Marxist Unification, rather than the more mainstream, Soviet-backed communist brigades. During this time, he witnessed firsthand how the Soviet-backed Communist Party betrayed and brutally suppressed its leftist allies like the POM to consolidate power and control the revolution. He was wounded in the throat by a sniper and barely escaped Spain alive amidst violent purges of the POM by Soviet-aligned forces. This traumatic experience turned him into a passionate and vocal anti-totalitarian socialist. He came to believe that the Soviet Union, under Stalin, had utterly betrayed the true ideals of socialism and had become a monstrous, oppressive dictatorship, just as dangerous as fascism. His book Homage to Catalonia details these harrowing experiences. Orwell's life was characterized by his unwavering commitment to honesty, clarity in language, and courage in exposing the abuse of power. These principles laid the intellectual and moral foundation for both Animal Farm and his later masterpiece. 1984. Part 3. Historical and Political Context. Animal Farm is not merely a fairy tale, it is a direct and thinly veiled allegory for the Russian Revolution of 1917 and the subsequent Stalinist era in the Soviet Union. Understanding this context is crucial to appreciating the novel's biting satire. The Russian Revolution, the seeds of rebellion. The early events of Animal Farm directly parallel the Russian Revolution. Mr. Jones symbolizes Tsar Nicholas II, the last emperor of Russia, who was seen as an incompetent and neglectful ruler, oblivious to the suffering of his people animals. His overthrow in the novel mirrors the February and October revolutions of 1917. Old Major's inspiring dream of animalism represents Marxism, the ideology developed by Karl Marx, and Leninism, Vladimir Lenin's interpretation and application of Marx's ideas. It provided the theoretical foundation for the Russian Revolution, a vision of a classless, equal society where the workers' proletariat would overthrow their oppressors. The Battle of the Cowshed, where the animals successfully repel humans, allegorizes the Russian Civil War 1918 to 1921. Where the Bolshevik Red Army defended the new Soviet state against internal anti-Bolshevik forces and foreign intervention. The Stalinist regime, the betrayal of ideals. The pig's ascent to absolute power and the corruption of Animal Farm directly mirrors the consolidation of power by Joseph Stalin and the establishment of his brutal totalitarian regime. The rivalry between Snowball and Napoleon is a clear parallel to the fierce power struggle between Leon Trotsky and Joseph Stalin after Lenin's death in 1924. Snowball, the intellectual and idealistic planner, is Trotsky, who advocated for spreading the revolution internationally. Napoleon, the ruthless and cunning operator, is Stalin, who focused on socialism in one country and ruthlessly eliminated all opposition. Trotsky was exiled by Stalin in 1929 and later assassinated in Mexico by Stalin's agents in 1940. The building of the windmill symbolizes Stalin's ambitious and often brutal 5-year plans for industrialization. These plans demanded immense sacrifice from the Soviet people, often leading to famine and suffering, much like the animals' tireless, often fruitless, labor on the windmill. The public confessions and executions of animals allegorize the Great Purge, 1936 to 1938, and show trials. During this period, Stalin orchestrated mass arrests, tortures, and executions of millions of alleged enemies of the state, often after forcing them to confess to fabricated crimes in highly publicized trials. Squealer's constant revision of history and manipulation of facts represents the Soviet propaganda machine. Particularly the state-controlled newspaper Pravda. It systematically rewrote history, glorified Stalin, demonized his opponents, and covered up the regime's failures. Boxer's ultimate betrayal and death symbolizes the betrayal of the working class by the Stalinist regime. The very people, the proletariat for whom the revolution was supposedly fought, were exploited, worked to death, and ultimately discarded when no longer useful. The publication context. Orwell wrote Animal Farm during World War II 1943 to 1944. This was a politically sensitive time, as the Soviet Union, under Stalin, was Britain's crucial ally against Nazi Germany. For this reason, many publishers were hesitant to take the book on, fearing it would damage Anglo-Soviet relations and public morale. Orwell faced significant difficulty getting it published. When it was finally published in 1945, the war was ending. The alliance with the Soviet Union was fracturing, and the Cold War was beginning to emerge. The book immediately became a sensation, serving as a powerful and chilling warning about the dangers of totalitarianism, whether fascist or communist. Enduring significance. Animal Farm remains as relevant today as it was in 1945 because it is not just a historical critique of Soviet Russia, but a profound examination of the universal mechanics of power, oppression, and manipulation itself. It teaches us indelible lessons about 1. How language can be weaponized and manipulated to control reality and obscure truth. 2. How fear, ignorance, and unquestioning loyalty enable tyranny to take root and flourish. 3. How revolutionary idealism can be corrupted and twisted into its exact opposite, leading to new, often more brutal, forms of oppression. In conclusion, Orwell's simple yet devastating fable serves as a timeless reminder that vigilance is the eternal price of liberty, and that we must always question authority and demand accountability.
Thank you for joining us.